In 1990, Selena's father called Chris Pérez a cancer and kicked him out of the band. What came next was 2 years of secret meetings, stolen kisses in a tour bus bathroom, and a marriage so rushed it took less than 10 minutes. For decades, Chris stayed silent about what really happened. Then, in March 2025, something changed. He opened up about the letters Selena wrote, the loss that haunts him every day, and why he still hears her voice when making decisions. The truth was darker than anyone expected. Selena Quintanilla came into the world on April 16, 1971, at Freeport Community Hospital in Lake Jackson, Texas, and she arrived as the youngest of 3 kids in a family that was already trying to stay afloat. Abraham Quintanilla Jr. had music in him, but music did not pay the bills back then. Marcella Ophelia Zamora did whatever work she could find. It was the kind of home where love was real, but money was always the missing piece, and every month felt like a new test. Then the bottom started to drop out around them. The oil recession in the late 1970s and early 1980s hit their area hard, and jobs that once looked solid started to vanish or shrink. Their restaurant Papagayo failed in 1981, and the family fell into a stretch where survival was the main plan. Welfare and food stamps became normal. Moving became normal too. It was not one clean move with a better house waiting. It was the kind of moving that happens when you cannot stay where you are, and you have to choose the next place fast. In the middle of all that stress, Selena's voice started showing itself in the simplest way. She was around 3 years old when she would sing in the car, copying songs she heard, including Dolly Parton's "I Really Got the Feelin'." Abraham heard her and froze. Not because it was cute, but because the pitch was right. The timing was right. It sounded like something that should not be coming from a little kid. That moment changed the air inside the family, because suddenly, Abraham did not just see another hard year coming. He saw a chance. So, the garage became a practice room. It was not fancy. It was just what they had. Selena practiced with her brother A.B. and her sister Suzette, and the days started to fill up with music instead of silence. Tejano music became the center, that blend of Mexican roots with country and pop flavors. And Selena stood out fast because she did not sing like someone who was learning. She sang like someone who belonged there. By the time she was 9, she was lead singer of Selena y los Dinos. And that detail matters because it tells you how early the pressure started. Childhood was still there, but it got squeezed between rehearsals, gigs, and the family's need to make money. They played weddings, fairs, and small places where the pay was never guaranteed and the crowd could be rough. Still, Abraham pushed because he believed the stage could keep them alive. That belief turned into a bigger sacrifice when the family's money troubles exploded into real consequences. In 1979, they were evicted in Lake Jackson after bankruptcy tied to the same recession pressure that kept tightening. So they moved to Corpus Christi, Texas. And the move did not feel like a fresh start. It felt like a restart with less comfort. Abraham took control of the plan and leaned even harder into music as the way forward. To keep the band moving, he pulled Selena, A.B., and Suzette out of public school and switched to homeschooling. It was strict. It was intense. Their world got smaller, and the routine got heavier. Rehearsals in a run-down garage, performing wherever they could, street corners, restaurants, community events. It was not glamorous. It was work. And the strange part is that work was supposed to save them, but it also started shaping Selena's entire identity around performing. Religion added another layer. Selena was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and in that kind of home, rules are not casual. Some celebrations were not allowed. Some school events were avoided. the family's life could feel closed off from other kids' lives. And that isolation made the music even more central because it became both the job and the social world. Abraham kept a tight grip, and some accounts describe practice days that could stretch up to 8 hours, starting early, pushing them to repeat the same parts until they were clean. Even with that discipline, fear still found Selena at times. One story says she felt stage fright at age 5 during a local talent show. But what matters is what happened after. She did not quit. She kept going, which became a pattern for her whole life. Fear would show up, and then she would walk through it. For years, the family stayed on welfare and food stamps, still trying to climb out. There is a story that Abraham sold old instruments to buy Selena her first microphone, a Vega model, and the way it gets told is like a symbol. Not just a piece of gear, but a sign that they were choosing music, even when it hurt. Selena later described that kind of sacrifice as a moment that felt like music saving them from poverty. And you can understand why she would feel it that way. When you have almost nothing, one working microphone can feel like a door. The early gigs were not just small, they could be ugly. In 1981, when she was about 10, Selena We Los Dinos played a paid show at a place called Chantilly Lace in Corpus Christi and earned $50. That sounds small, but to them it mattered. Still, even that night came with a lesson. Some people booed Selena for being a girl because the Tejano scene was used to male leads. Abraham reportedly stood his ground and threatened to pull the band if the crowd did not accept her. And that was not a one-time thing. The family faced rejection at different places, sometimes tied to sexism, sometimes tied to racism, and there are accounts of crowds throwing food during certain gigs. It was humiliating. It was also fuel, because Selena learned early that winning a crowd was not automatic. She had to take it. By 1982, the touring became non-stop. The family moved into a run-down house in Corpus Christi, and they traveled in a borrowed van, sometimes covering up to 200 miles a day to chase fairs and small venues. Selena was still very young, yet she was out there doing bilingual covers, even songs by Kiss and Donna Summer, which stood out in a Tejano world that did not always expect that kind of mix. No formal training, just raw talent and repetition, and a family that refused to stop. With that pace, tension inside the band was almost unavoidable. By 1983, when Selena was around 12, there are stories of arguments between Selena and AB about creative control, about changing lyrics or melodies. Marcella often gets described as the calm one, stepping in when the house got too hot. And the truth is, when music becomes the family business, every disagreement feels bigger because it threatens the only thing paying the bills. In 1984, they self-released their debut album on cassette and sold about 500 copies door-to-door at fairs. That hustle should have been a proud moment, but it also brought a new problem: bootlegging, copycats, people duplicating tapes without permission. There is an account that Abraham sued a small label for $2,000 in stolen royalties. And whether every detail lands exactly or not, the lesson is clear. Even small success can get stolen fast, especially when you do not have power yet. Around this same time, Selena's image became another battlefield. By 1985, when she was 14, puberty hit and the family's control tightened. Abraham wanted an innocent look. Selena wanted self-expression. There are stories of her trying eyeliner in secret and getting into a major argument at home, with gigs even being affected for a short time. It was not just about makeup. It was about Selena growing up in a world where her father still wanted to hold the steering wheel. Industry pressure was not gentle either. Selena signed with Freddie Records in 1984 at age 13 in some accounts, and there are also stories about how poorly she was promoted and how hard it was for a young girl in Tejano to get radio support. Some versions of the story even claim Abraham paid local DJs $50 to $100 per spin to force a song onto the air. Whether people frame it as hustle or desperation, it shows what the family believed. They thought nobody would hand them a fair chance, so they tried to buy time and attention any way they could. And still, Selena was doing something even bigger behind the scenes. She was learning Spanish on the job. She mostly spoke English at home, and she learned Spanish phonetically, using her ears and repetition, building confidence on stage while still growing in private. That is a tough way to learn, because the crowd does not care that you are learning. The crowd only reacts to what they hear in that moment. The turning points started stacking. On February 28, 1986, at the Tejano Music Awards in San Antonio, Selena had a breakout moment. She performed, and some accounts describe a standing ovation that lasted around 5 minutes, with about 5,000 fans in the room. And she won Female Vocalist of the Year. That win mattered because it was proof in public, not just inside the family, that Selena could lead in a space that had been dominated by men for decades. With attention came more pressure and more weird demands. Stories from that era often describe promoters telling Abraham they wanted Selena to tone down her movement or stop being so charismatic, like they were afraid she would outshine the male stars. It sounds ridiculous, but that is how change gets resisted. People pretend they are giving advice when they are really trying to shrink you. The schedule only got harsher. Some accounts describe 200-plus shows a year, and huge miles on the road, and the band living like they were always half asleep and always chasing the next stage. They called their bus Big Bertha, and the road became home. Selena did not get the normal teen life. She got highways, dressing rooms, quick meals, quick naps, and then lights in her face again. There were moments where the grind cracked through. Stories describe breakdowns on stage, exhaustion, tears after booze, and the kind of emotional whiplash that comes from being treated like a hero one night and a joke the next night. There is also a dramatic story about a hidden diary that Abraham found around the time Selena was 9, describing her fears of abandonment and her pain during the hard years, and how that discovery turned into a harsh lesson inside the family. People tell it differently, but the theme is the same. The family was hungry, and hunger can turn love into pressure fast. By 1987 and 1988, Selena's awards and popularity kept rising. The wins became a streak in the Tejano Music Awards, and her name started to feel unavoidable. Some stories even describe massive crowds at San Antonio area events, ticket prices being pushed up by scalpers, and chaos spilling into fights and arrests. It is hard to know every number in those retellings, but what is clear is that Selena was pulling a new kind of audience, including young fans and young women who finally saw someone like them on stage. Even the music choices became a fight. There are stories about an album experiment in 1987 that tried to include more English material, and about the backlash from fans who wanted pure Spanish Tejano. The family reportedly pivoted back quickly. That is another pattern in Selena's story. She had big dreams, but she also had to survive the market she was in. And survival sometimes meant stepping back before you could step forward again. Then came 1989, which became a bridge to a new level. Jose Behar at EMI Latin heard her and believed she could be bigger than the regional circuit. The deal talks were tense. Abraham pushed for control, and the label pushed back. Selena reportedly gave a private audition that helped seal the relationship and led to a compromise where Abraham stayed manager while Selena's path stayed protected. However the details get told, the result is what matters. Selena moved from the road hustle into a major label world while still carrying the same family machine behind her. In 1990, her self-titled album and songs like Baila Esta Cumbia hit hard in the Tejano space, but piracy stayed a problem, especially across borders. There are accounts of authorities seizing huge piles of bootleg copies, sometimes described as over 100,000, and whether the exact count is right or not, piracy was real and it was massive. Success kept getting chased by theft. By 1991 and 1992, the spotlight had grown bright enough to attract real danger too. Stories from that period talk about threats, about people following vehicles, about Abraham tightening security, about armed guards at times, because fame is not just applause. Sometimes it is jealousy with teeth. In 1992, Selena also started stepping into business outside music. She launched Selena Etc. with $30,000 in family savings, and the dream came with a harsh lesson early. There are accounts that 3 employees stole from the store, and Selena fired them herself. That detail says a lot about her. She was not just the singer who showed up for photos. She was hands-on, trying to learn how money works, how trust works, and how quickly both can disappear. Selena dropped Amor Prohibido on March 22, 1994, and it did not creep into the world quietly. It hit like a door flying open. Within months, 500,000 copies were gone, and a lot of that heat came from Beady Beady Bom Bom, because the song felt like it was smiling and sprinting at the same time. Then something strange happened. Mexican radio stations started banning tracks, including the title song, saying the beats sounded too American. The blend of techno-cumbia and hip-hop scared the gatekeepers, and the airplay got cut by about 70% at first. So fans did what fans do when they feel someone is being punished for being new. They moved faster than the stations. By June 1994, petitions crossed 15,000 signatures, and stations like Zet in Monterrey began reversing bans after boycott threats started to sound real. The censorship did not choke the album, it fed it. Soon, the album sat at #1 on Billboard's regional Mexican albums chart for 97 non-consecutive weeks, a stretch that became the longest ever. By 1997, it had sold 2.5 million worldwide. EMI Latin even said it shipped 2 million units in the United States alone after release, and it was outpacing rivals like La Mafia. Meanwhile, the bands created a whole underground river. Mixtapes moved hand to hand, bootlegs spread in border towns, and the bootleg number climbed to 100,000 because when people are told not to play something, they often want it twice as much. Even the album's little experiments felt like signals. In Fotos y Recuerdos, Selena sampled the Pretenders' Back on the Chain Gang, and that almost caused a problem big enough to derail the release. Then Chrissie Hynde approved the lyrics on March 20, 1994, just in time. Selena was 23, and she was already the sales queen of Tejano. Reports later tied her 1994 royalties to $4 million, which told the industry something it did not want to admit yet. She was not a niche. She was a force, and the title track itself kept turning heads, even away from the music. Amor Prohibido hit on April 13, 1994, and people immediately argued about what it was really saying. The story behind it sounded like a secret pulled from a dusty drawer. It came from love letters connected to Selena's great-grandmother, tied to a maid and a man she loved in the 1920s in Nueva Rosita, Mexico. The lyrics talk about forbidden love and class lines, and some listeners also read it as a same-sex story, which made the song feel even more dangerous to people who wanted everything neat. That tension spilled into real life. At a June 18th concert in Monterrey, protests flared. Around 5,000 fans got so angry about the moral decay talk surrounding her that they hurled bottles at police, and 12 officers were injured. But the backlash did not slow the song down. It pushed it into more mouths, more cars, more kitchens, more late nights. Sales climbed to 1 million United States copies by August, and it hit platinum. On Billboard Hot Latin Songs, it stayed at #1 for 9 weeks, starting June 11, 1994, and it ended up as the year's #1 Latin single with 420,000 certified units. Inside her own circle, the fear was real at first. Abraham Quintanilla worried the song would bring heat they could not control. Then fan letters started piling up, around 2,000 a week, and the message was clear. People did not just like the song. They felt seen by it. The track had been recorded on September 17, 1993, and during the San Antonio sessions, Selena slipped in an "Oh Baby" ad-lib that gave it an extra ache, something Chris Pérez later noticed right away. By 1995, the trophies matched the noise. It won Tejano Music Awards for Single and Record of the Year, and it also won Lo Nuestro for Regional Mexican Song. Even the chaos paid in a blunt way. Protests boosted visibility and pushed about 20,000 more ticket sales regionally, like the world was proving that controversy can be its own billboard. Then came the night that turned her into something bigger than a chart position. On February 26, 1994, Selena walked into the Houston Astrodome and pulled in 64,405 fans, breaking Elvis Presley's 1956 record of 26,000 for a Latin act. It was her 23rd birthday weekend. The crowd was packed tight, and the show was already roaring when the lights suddenly failed. At 9:47 p.m., a power surge caused a 20-minute blackout. Those massive 100,000-watt lights went dark, while more than 60,000 people screamed. And a situation like that can turn ugly fast. But Selena did not freeze. She grabbed a flashlight, joked in Spanish, "No se vayan, el show sigue con pilas." And then she sang "Como la Flor," a cappella, calm and steady, like she was holding the room with her hands. The backup generators failed because overloaded circuits could not handle new laser effects that cost $50,000. So she treated the blackout like a test, and she passed it in public. When the power finally returned, she restarted with Amor Prohibido and stretched the whole night into a 2.5-hour show. Reports tied the Univision broadcast to 5 million viewers. Billboard's March 5 issue mentioned the headlines and credited her poise for 0 injuries, even with fire marshal warnings hanging in the background. That night grossed $750,000, and it also built her reputation as Tejano's biggest live draw. It topped her 1993 Astrodome record of 60,948, and her 1995 finale later hit 66,994, right before everything ended. By 1995, she was also breaking barriers in rooms that were not built for her. On February 16, 1995, Selena won a Grammy for Best Mexican-American Album for Live from 1994, and she became the first Tejano woman to do it. She beat 10 male acts during the 37th Annual Awards, and the win lit up pride in one place and envy in another. Whispers started spreading. Names got mentioned. David Lee Garza was one of the peers tied to the gossip. And the talk turned darker when technical problems hit at the Tejano Music Awards on January 28, 1995. Her setup shorted twice mid-performance, and engineer logs blamed loose XLR pins. Then anonymous calls reportedly hit EMI Latin on March 10, threatening blackouts for Grammy stages. Still, Selena walked out and performed Amor Prohibido flawlessly. She got a standing ovation from 15,000 attendees. That same night, she swept 6 Tejano awards, including Album of the Year for Amor Prohibido. Her live sales jumped 300% to 500,000 units after the ceremony. And the whispers only made her look more unstoppable, especially as people sensed she was aiming for an English crossover that purists did not want. And she was not only building a music career, she was building a whole image, stitched by her own hands. During the June 1994 promo run, Selena wore bustiers she designed herself, covered in Swarovski crystals that cost about $2,000 each. She blended Tejano flair with pop shine, and it looked like a signature. Then came a moment that tabloids would not let go of. On July 15th, at a Miami Univision taping for Primer Impacto, a zipper snapped mid-Beady Beady Bomb Bomb at 8:22 p.m. live. For 45 seconds, her midriff was exposed in front of about 2 million viewers before crew rushed in with a jacket. The next day, papers like La Prensa screamed about a sexy slip, and 500,000 copies sold. Abraham was furious. He banned the design and demanded reinforced corsets by August 1st. Selena went back to work anyway. At her Corpus Christi boutique, she sewed around 50 outfits, adding metal clasps after that. The mishap still had an effect, whether she liked it or not. EMI linked it to a 40% spike in single sales in Florida. The redesigned look showed up at the Astrodome, and by 1995, about 10,000 replicas had sold, turning a human mistake into a $100,000 merch boom. While the spotlight was busy watching her clothes and charts, her business life was expanding fast. By late 1994, her boutiques in Corpus Christi were thriving, grossing around $1 million a year and employing dozens. But behind the counter and behind the smiles, Yolanda Saldivar, the fan club president and boutique manager, was reportedly stealing. Checks were forged. Money was diverted from the fan club and the boutiques. The number tied to the theft was over $60,000, and some estimates compare it to about $123,813 in later value. Employees saw unpaid bills and missing items. Fans complained about memberships that brought nothing back. Abraham started digging after angry letters kept coming, and when he confronted Saldivar, there was no clear explanation. Selena fired her from the boutiques in March 1995. But by then, the story had already become a fuse. At the same time, the crossover dream was pressing on her throat, literally. Her English album, Dreaming of You, was supposed to open the global pop door in 1995, and the Los Angeles sessions came with big names and bigger demands. The label pushed her to Americanize her voice, and that pressure created strain. Long hours, few breaks, a growing sense that she was being asked to sand down the parts of herself that made her Selena. Tensions reportedly exploded when producers demanded changes, and one argument cost a full week of recording. She felt guilty about delays, but she also did not want to fake her sound just to please executives. The album was only half finished when she was killed in March 1995. And still, when it finally arrived, it hit like a wave. In the middle of all this, she was still touring, still showing up, still saving moments that should have broken people. Her 1994 Baila America tour reportedly sold over 300,000 tickets and crossed into 10 United States states. Then came an El Paso border crossing mess, where delays stranded the band and fans overnight. Officials held the convoy for hours over paperwork, and the crowd got restless. Selena stepped in and began singing a cappella, turning a stressful wait into something people would later call a memory instead of a disaster. The irony was painful. Border waits were already known for being brutal, sometimes over 90 minutes. And yet she still made fans feel like they mattered, even when no one else was moving. She also knew how to handle drama without feeding it. In 1994, Tejano legend Laura Canales accused Selena of stealing songwriters, and the feud made headlines. Fans chose sides fast, because everyone loves a fight when they are not the one bleeding. Selena answered with calm. She invited Canales to collaborate on a duet, and the song became a hit. The story flipped from rivalry to partnership, and Selena looked like someone who could turn noise into momentum. She was also careful with money and image, even when big checks were dangled. Amor Prohibido reached number 29 on the Billboard 200 in 1994, which executives did not expect from a Tejano artist. The album spent months on charts, and singles like Bidi Bidi Bom Bom dominated Latin radio. She reportedly turned down a $1 million underwear endorsement, saying it was not authentic to her. That choice made her look even sharper, because it proved she was playing a long game. The album became the first Tejano album to top the Billboard Top Latin Albums chart, spending 20 weeks at No. 1 and 98 weeks in the top 5. And it pushed the whole market forward. Behind the stage story, her personal life was also living inside secrets. She met Chris Pérez in 1989 when he joined Los Dinos as lead guitarist. He was 20 and she was 18, and the connection hit fast. But Abraham ran everything and forbade relationships. Worried love would distract from the machine they had built. So Selena and Chris dated in hiding, meeting in corners, stealing moments, even kissing in the tour bus bathroom. When Abraham discovered it in 1990, he fired Chris and called him a cancer to the family. Chris was crushed, but the two kept finding ways to stay connected. Calls, notes, quiet promises. That secret love lasted 2 years until they chose the only move left. On April 2, 1992, Selena went to Chris's hotel room early in the morning and told him they were getting married right away. They drove to a courthouse in Corpus Christi with 2 witnesses. The ceremony took less than 10 minutes. Then they hid it. When Abraham found out days later, he refused to speak to them for a month. Selena hid love letters inside her guitar case. Eventually, the marriage forced a kind of acceptance, but the tension did not disappear. Even their honeymoon was described like a mission. Secret trips to Acapulco, between tour dates, hidden hotels, public faces that pretended nothing had changed. When Abraham learned about a private reception he had not been invited to, he refused to attend, and Selena broke down so hard she even considered divorce. Living 2 lives like that can crack a person. They kept going anyway. Chris also shaped the sound. He pushed more rock energy into her music, especially on Amor Prohibido. And you can hear it in songs like Si Una Vez, where the edge cuts through the Tejano shine. But Abraham worried about the image, and the response was control. Reports describe hidden microphones in dressing rooms and people watching them on tours, trying to catch signs of intimacy. Instead, it just made Selena and Chris more determined to protect what they had. Then came another pressure that did not fit into interviews and award speeches. In 1994, Selena and Chris reportedly started trying for a baby, but the schedule was relentless. There was a miscarriage scare tied to exhaustion, and doctors told her to rest. It brought them closer, while also reminding them how fragile the dream was, especially as the English crossover pressure kept rising. And then, the betrayal that had been hiding in plain sight finally snapped into the open. By January 1995, angry calls and letters from fans were flooding in about fan club memberships that never delivered promised items. Boutique bills went unpaid. Staff noticed missing money. Abraham's investigation pointed to Yolanda Saldivar, and the theft number stayed over $60,000. Selena confronted her in early March, devastated. During one tense moment, Saldivar reportedly threatened suicide, which shook Selena and raised the danger level instantly. Selena fired her, but Saldivar did not disappear. She escalated. On March 31, 1995, Selena met Saldivar at a Days Inn in Corpus Christi to retrieve financial records and confront what had been stolen. Saldivar had reportedly bought a .38 Taurus revolver after being fired, and the attack came with cold intent. Selena was shot once in the back at close range. The injury caused massive bleeding, and doctors later said the cause of death was blood loss from the gunshot wound. Even after being hit, Selena ran about 400 yards to the hotel lobby, screaming for help and telling staff to call 911. Witnesses said she warned them to lock the door because Yolanda is going to shoot me again. She collapsed at the front desk, giving the room number and naming Saldivar before losing consciousness. Selena was rushed to Memorial Medical Center and pronounced dead at 1:05 p.m. The details were brutal, and the speed of it was part of the horror. One moment, she was trying to fix a business problem. Next, she was gone. Outside, the aftermath unfolded in full view of the world. Saldivar barricaded herself in a red pickup truck in the Days Inn parking lot with a gun to her head. The standoff lasted 9.5 hours, broadcast live as the country watched. Negotiators worked to calm her, and she kept crying, "Larry, I am so sorry," while refusing to surrender. Eventually she did, but by then, the story had already scarred everyone. The trial in 1995 became a storm. Fans and media packed the courthouse. Saldivar was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, with parole eligibility beginning in 2025. Emotions outside exploded into chaos at points, with reports of injuries around the courthouse atmosphere. The case also dragged out disturbing claims about obsession and stalking behavior, and it left a community feeling like it had been robbed by someone who had been allowed too close. Then, Selena's absence became a kind of presence that did not stop growing. Dreaming of You was released on July 18, 1995. In its first week in the United States, it sold 331,155 copies. On its first day alone, it sold $175,000, a record at the time for a female artist. On August 5, 1995, it debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, becoming the first predominantly Spanish-language album to top that chart. I Could Fall in Love became a huge radio hit, reaching #1 on Hot Latin Songs and breaking into the top 20 of the Hot 100 airplay chart, pulling new listeners into her world even after she was gone. Texas honored her fast. 2 weeks after her death, Governor George W. Bush declared April 16th, her birthday, as Selena Day in the state. Years later, in 2020, the United States Postal Service released a Selena Forever stamp on April 16th as part of its Music Icons series, turning her image into something that would travel across the country on ordinary mail, like a quiet reminder that she was no longer just regional history. And the mourning was overwhelming. On April 3, 1995, her body lay in a closed casket at Bayfront Plaza Auditorium in Corpus Christi, surrounded by 5,000 white roses. Fans lined up as early as 4 a.m. By 9 a.m., the line was already massive. It stretched nearly a mile along Shoreline Boulevard, and almost 60,000 people passed by before the doors closed at 10 p.m. The emotion was so intense that rumors spread the coffin was empty, and the family opened it to prove she was inside. People fainted. People sobbed. It became one of the largest public mourning events in United States music history, because for many fans, she was not just a singer. She was proof. Even decades later, the story kept moving. In March 2025, Chris Pérez, then 56, spoke more openly than usual in interviews tied to a Netflix documentary called Selena y los Dinos, A Family's Legacy. He said he still hears Selena's voice in his head when he makes big decisions, and he admitted he still cannot watch scenes that show her death because the pain is too sharp even after 30 years. Later, in November 2025, A People magazine feature described him talking about Selena's handwritten love letters as his most prized possessions. He said her death split his life into Chris before and Chris after, and he still turns to those letters for strength. Then the legal chapter that had haunted the story for 30 years came back into the light. On March 27, 2025, the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles denied parole to Yolanda Saldivar. The board cited the nature of the offense and planning as reasons she still posed a threat to public safety. Selena's family and Chris Pérez released a joint statement that same day saying they were grateful parole was denied, and they asked people to focus on Selena's love and music instead of the tragedy.